So I'm going to give you this quick video to take you through the steps on how to do this project. So we've done the Zentangles before, and hopefully you practice block lettering. So I'm just going to talk about how to pull this whole thing together. So in this finished product, you have the 4 words, and then in every other space inside, in between, you have the Zentangles that you picked. Okay. So to start off, I gave you this handout, and the handout has areas that you can practice. So you can practice in here, and again, if you have a word that has 6 letters, let's say, you divide up the space into 6 spaces very lightly, and then you can go back over them and practice your block lettering inside of those spaces. Okay. All right. 2 ways that you can do some block lettering. Let's say that we're doing the letter F. You can draw out the letter F. I'm going to go kind of dark so you can see in the demo. And then you go around the outside to thicken it up. And then you would have to erase what's inside. Okay, and then you make very bold what's on the outside. Another way is to lay out the letters as though they are like sausages. So if the letter has a line coming up and down and then a line across, you can make those into like sausages like that. And then you can go around the outside and then erase. So whatever method you have, the way that you do this is you figure out the number of letters you have, divide that space into the number of spaces you need for each letter, and then draw the letters inside. Now, when you get to here, it's a little bit more challenging. You have to figure out whether you want the word to be written from the center out, or if you wanted the word to be written from the out to the center. But the same rules apply. You split up the space, and then you draw those letters so that they touch the edges of that space. You want to make them as large as possible in that space. So where that area is really, really big, you're going to be making those words really, really stretched out, those letters. And wherever those letters have to get really small in those spaces, because those spaces are really teeny tiny, they're going to get smushed. So that's why you have this sheet, so that way you can practice making those letters in those weird spaces. So when you're working on your final, you're going to be needing a rough draft paper, which should be the same size as your final draft. So you have one that's your rough draft that you're going to practice with, and then you have a same size sheet for your final. So the reason why it's a rough draft is because, you're going to practice, but also you're going to have to find the center point and all of that, and you're going to have to fold this paper. To find the center point, you fold it in half, make a little crease, especially in the middle. Okay, I'm going to just show you that crease right there. And then you're going to fold it long ways the same way. Okay, and there's my crease. Sorry, I'm waiting for it to get back into focus. And there's my crease right there. And where those 2 creases meet, that's my center point. You are going to make your own swiggly lines. One's going to go down. Sorry about the camera here. One's going to go from top to bottom, going through the center. And again, this is a rough draft, so you can do it lightly and kind of figure it all out. You can erase. You can rethink it. Another one's going to go across. And now the other two lines are going to go from corner to corner. So I'm going to start from here, go into the center. You don't want these overly squiggly because it's going to be difficult to draw your words in those spaces. And then you're going to practice drawing your spaces, your shapes, and your letters inside these spaces. They're a little bit bigger than the practice sheet. So, but the same rules apply. So you're going to practice your words. My suggestion is to get all of your words on your practice sheet practiced and worked out, because anything that you draw on here could be traced onto your final. So you can take your final paper, if you have your words on here and everything all laid out, then you can go ahead and place your final draft on here, go up to a window and trace this out, trace all these lines out as well as the letters without having any creases on your paper. So then when you're done, you can take your words and you can take your lines and you're going to go over all of that in Sharpie. All right, this is my final draft. I went over all my lines and my letters in Sharpie, and then I erased all the pencil. It's at this point that you want to put your Zentangles in. So the one thing about the Zentangles is that when you did your sheet, you were working on these small squares. Now you're putting these Zentangles in these big spaces. So a couple of rules of thumb is don't over enlarge your Zentangles. Like if your elements are this small here, you don't want your Zentangles on here to be really blown out. Okay, you don't want them to be terribly huge. Also, something like a checkerboard like this, you see how this one's done with lines, horizontal and vertical lines? You could try out, and again, you could take your practice sheet and practice your Zentangles, but you can put them, you can kind of make that checkerboard a little bit wavy. So then when you go over your Zentangles, they could be a little kind of wavy and swirly and just like going in the same sort of direction as the shapes that you're putting them in. You could see how like right in here it got a little bit kind of squished up a little bit, and that's okay. The lines aren't perfectly vertical or horizontal anymore. Okay? So you're going to do this lightly in pencil. You can practice on a practice sheet before you go on lightly in pencil onto your final. But eventually you're going to go over everything in a pen. I don't recommend using the Sharpie marker, this Sharpie marker for your Zentangles, because this marker will give you, your lines are going to probably be too thick for that. So I recommend using either a ballpoint pen, or I'm using this Sharpie pen right here. It's a felt tip, and that works just fine. But it's going to give me thinner lines for my design. Okay. When I'm done with all of my Zentangles and went over them in a pen, I'm going to erase it again. And then the very last thing is I'm going to come up with a color scheme for your actual letters. Okay, and you're going to just color in your letters. You can use colored pencil or you can use marker.